Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teaching Writing in College, where the driving question is, how can instructors in higher education leverage theory, science, pedagogy, and craft most effectively to help their learners with writing? Very glad to have you along. This is episode 27. genAI prompts me to make adjustments in the classroom, and so this is an episode where I am going to bring in a couple of lesson plans, one without AI and then one with AI, or at least in response to AI, so that I can just kind of show adjustments that I'd like to continue to make in the work that I do in my class. And just a brief recap of last time, I shared two brief outlines for lesson plans that I had, just kind of a before and after adjusting for AI. But the goal was to maintain focus on a rhetorical strategy, which was the strategy of presence from Chaim Perelman, even if the learner is writing with AI. So the idea is to learn about writing first, then learn about AI and make adjustments. And I also had this little acronym that I sort of spontaneously made when I was doing that episode called Looper. When I was preparing for that episode, it just came to me, learn the tools, use the tools, practice the tools, and reflect on the tools. So I'm kind of putting that into practice here by showing my PowerPoints that I would take into the classroom in each case, before AI and after AI. So this time it's just a walkthrough of those lesson plans instead of just an outline. But I also have to give just a little bit of a backstory here. One is that I can introduce something that I use a lot that makes lesson planning very easy. Just kind of a brief backstory for me. Back in 2012, when I was beginning my current position at GCU, I had applied for this job and I got it. GCU was building out its ground campus and was working on bringing students in, and they wanted the teaching to be as good as they could get it to be. And so I had already been teaching for 13 years, and so I already was kind of a veteran, and I already had ideas about how I would run the classroom, but I also did not have a lot of training in just facilitating a classroom discussion. I had some things in the teaching seminars that I took, both at the master's when I started my master's degree and then also my PhD. But I didn't really have a lot of background just in plain old classroom pedagogy. And GCU stepped in and supplied some of that for me. And so what happened was I learned what I call RLDAC. That's just the abbreviation for it, RLDAC. But that first semester I was there was a teaching workshop by Sherman Elliott, who is the Dean of the Humanities College, which is now CHSS. We call it CHAS. But way back then in 2012, he offered this little workshop, and he does it again pretty much every year for new teachers, I think. But what it does is it helps with communications. It helps with connection making with students. It makes it a lot easier for students to follow me without my confusing them. And so for me, in my just teaching practice, it was a real game changer. And so I committed it to memory, and I use it all the time now if I have to make a new lesson plan. And I will say that for me, lesson planning is probably one of my favorite parts of my job. To develop a good lesson plan to me is just a lot of fun, and I like to develop new things and take them into the classroom in a way that I think will help students the most. And so RLDAC stands for Review, Launch, Deliver, Apply, and Close. And I, once again, I just really love it. So review is just to connect to something that students will have encountered before. Sometimes that's just something we know that they might have encountered before based on who they are and what we know about them. Sometimes it might be something that comes from something we have done previously in class. And so just some way to engage something that they already know. It's really, really important for learning, just to connect to something they already know. And then launch is the next part, something that sets the stage for new material. That what you do is you take a piece of a problem or something that just gets them ready to receive some new information. It's kind of a bridge between the review and the delivery, that presentation of new material. You've got to kind of bridge that a little bit. And so giving them some kind of activity, some kind of question to ponder, something like that, some little bit of reflection kind of sets the stage for that new material. And then deliver, of course, present that new material, maybe by defining things and also maybe by explaining how, the next activity is going to go. And then apply is that actual opportunity for the students to work with that new material, whatever it happens to be. And so that kind of becomes the central thing that we're building up to, because of course, we want students to engage with the material, and that's their main engagement in that apply portion. And then close is an opportunity, to reflect on the new material, maybe to anticipate what else is coming next, something to kind of tie it all together again. And there are lots of different things that you can do at any one of these stages. But just having that framework, review, launch, deliver, apply, and close, has made it really easy for me over the years. I committed this to memory a long time ago just so that it would be automatic. And it helps me a lot. Sometimes I find myself, it is unfortunate, once in a while, I might find myself in a position where I'm supposed to deliver some material, but I don't have a lot. There have been times maybe where I've, on short notice, gone into substitute for somebody else's class or something like that. I'd really try not to go in without anything in my classes. I think that's probably one of the worst things somebody could do as a teacher, but every once in a while it might happen for various reasons. And even then, having review, launch, deliver, apply, close is helpful. And so you're going to see how it works today. And so with that said, we can go ahead and get into the lesson plans that I have. And so let's see. All right. So here I've got, this is my first one. This is a lesson about presence where I'm introducing it to students. And you can see I've got my PowerPoint here with all the different parts. And this is following review, launch, deliver, apply, close. But let me see. Let me get up to the front of it here. And so for review, we have one thing I like to do with students is a knowledge inventory. Please list the names of all the skills we've learned so far. And this is what I would ask here, if I'm going to introduce a new skill like presence, like I've talked about on previous podcasts, if I'm going to introduce a new skill, it helps just to review the skills that we've already learned because it's something that they're going to add to their toolbox. And so basically it's just asking, what's your toolbox? What's your knowledge inventory? Please list the names of all the skills we've learned so far, just to kind of get them ready for something else that is coming. Let's see if I can make this full screen. There we go. Okay, here it comes. Oh. And then next, maybe I'll take it off of there because the font isn't working out the way that I thought it would. Okay. So the first thing is the knowledge inventory. The second thing, now this would be the launch. Knowledge inventory would have been the review in this case. The launch portion is that ladder of abstraction that I've talked about in a couple of previous episodes. And so what I'm asking students to do is to go from abstract to concrete language. And the reason why I've chosen this is because it is a part of the way maybe presence is defined. And so what I'm doing is just giving them a taste of this new strategy that they're going to learn. And so ladder of abstraction, from abstract to concrete language, I've got my own example here on the left. And then on the right, just an explanation of sort of the steps from abstract to concrete. So this is one I probably ought to update it because technology has gotten a little bit better since then. I've had this one for a while, but it's one that I wrote. So at the very abstract stage, the laptop has all the features a person could want. Going down a little bit further on the ladder to more concrete, the Apple computer has features that a college student needs, such as internet access and external storage options. And then the third one down, just getting more concrete, the MacBook Air comes with plenty of hardware features that will help beginning college students interface with data. The wireless N airport card connects seamlessly to the Lopes wireless network. A lightning-fast Thunderbolt port will plug in directly to my Samsung 250 gigabyte solid-state drive. So just things to make it more concrete. And so I even slipped in the word presence here in this launch. As you can see there, step 3, it's very concrete. The MacBook is very present. I put that in quotes in the writing at this level. And so then I might just start to engage the students a little bit, and I'm going to have them practice on their own here. But, just maybe in the class, just briefly, which descriptive word is lower on the ladder of abstraction? And so then I've got 2 words there, amputation and surgery. And of course, amputation would probably be more concrete. It would be lower on the ladder of abstraction. And a lot of students probably would say that. But it's just, to warm them up because they're going to do the same thing I did. So then I get to the next part. And I have my example here again, and this is just a little participation piece. Practice on footwear by creating samples that move from abstract to concrete. So those are the instructions. Just like I did, I talked them through it. And so I've got my example with the laptop again, and then your example for them to do in their own notes, footwear. And so I just give them footwear, and they all have footwear on, and so it would be easy for them just to do something like I did. Start with maybe just a vague sentence on number 1 on the ladder, kind of at the top of the ladder of abstraction. 2, get a little bit more concrete, a little bit more descriptive. And then 3, just be as descriptive as possible in however many words that might be. That might be up to 50 words maybe. But the idea there is just to get really concrete. And so that gives them an opportunity to try out some presence, even though they haven't been introduced to it fully yet. So after they've had a chance to practice and we've bridged from, material that they already knew to this new material coming up, I would go to deliver. And so for presence, thoughtco.com, thoughtco.com, I remember finding this out there, and this actually prompted me when I first did this. I found this and I recognized this. This is a ThoughtCo article or entry from Richard Nordquist, and I had heard Richard Nordquist's name before, and so I thought, oh, this looks legitimate when I first encountered it, many years ago. But when I did, I noticed that he had gotten, just the basic notes on this, and he wrote his entry and had some quotes from James Jasinski's source book on rhetoric that prompted me to go out and buy the source book on rhetoric so that I would have a copy too. But he's got some things here in his entry that are really, really helpful. And so I've got a couple things highlighted on this slide. This is me offering this bit of knowledge to students. And so I've got presence over there on the right. I've got the word, and I define it this way. Another way to create an impression in writing by making something seem immediate and real for the audience. And then I just show where I've got it from. But then what I did is I took a screenshot, and I've got just a couple of little bits highlighted that I talk. I probably would read through some of this with students, but then I've got these highlighted parts. As Murphy noted, the idea of presence is a conceptual metaphor. When presence is achieved, what initially was absent almost seems to be in the room with the audience. Then Nordquist has James Jasinski quoted there. And then there's presence and figurative language, another little part to this. And the parable that gets included, which I think also came from James Jasinski, or it came from Chaim Perelman. A king sees an ox on its way to sacrifice. He is moved to pity for it and orders that a sheep be used in its place. He confesses he did so because he could see the ox, but not the sheep. And so those are some things from, our literature in rhetoric about presence that I can share with students. Just a tidbit, just enough for them to see kind of what it is and give them a way to define it. And so then after that, I share an example of my own. And in this case, I have my description of my kitchen that I shared on this podcast a few episodes ago. And so I would read this to them and say, here's how it works. If you're just writing, just for practice, you could write like this, and you just make it as concrete as you can. And so if you were to pause the video here, you could reread this. But this is just my description of my kitchen, and I just tried to make it as concrete as possible. Something that I could share with students just to show them how it works in a little more detail. And then looks like in this PowerPoint, I have another quick pause here. Individual participation. Which of these two examples has more presence? Again, just a couple of examples I came up with on my own. Example A, the old blue convertible with a sloped front and paint that needs a touch-up. And then B, a sky blue 1963 Volkswagen Beetle with a ragtop and chipped paint on the rear driver's side fender. And of course, if you ask students this, they're going to choose B. It's the one that has more presence. And so now I'm using the language of rhetoric, in this case presence, to just give them a concept that helps define a strategy that they can use in their own writing. And so let's see, this one is the AI version, I think. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the other one, sorry. What I would do before I had adapted for AI, I would give them that description of my kitchen and then have them do the same kind of thing, just write a passage. And so mine, I don't know, I'm going to say is probably about 200 words or something. And just for the sake of time, I might give them 100 words, but I'll ask them to describe something as well. And so the instructions say, write a passage of description like mine, but make yours about our classroom. And that makes it easy for them because the classroom is right there. And they can see things and say, oh, I could describe this or I could describe that. And then make sure to make the classroom seem present to someone who has not seen it. Make the language as concrete as you can. And just give them a chance to practice that to get a real feel for how it works. And so by now, I'm at the apply stage. Review was the knowledge inventory. Then launch was the ladder of abstraction. Deliver was the definition of presence. And now we're at apply. And so they're getting a chance to actually apply it in some detail and just make the language as concrete as they can just by writing a passage. And so it's pretty similar to the ladder of abstraction, except this time we're just full out. We're creating presence by being really descriptive here with whatever it is we see in front of us. And so I'd give them that chance to practice. And then for to wrap it all up, for the close portion of the lesson plan, in your notes, name another specific circumstance in which you might use presence in writing. And so I'm just giving them a chance to kind of sum it all up. So, okay, here's what I learned. I learned about presence, and a good important question for transfer is, okay, where could I use it? And so closure is about, an opportunity to reflect maybe, and it can go in lots of different ways. In this particular case, I like to get them thinking early about, oh, this could be used outside of the classroom somewhere. And so I gave some suggestions. A personal communication you anticipate making in the near future. And so I could, suggest in class, maybe you've ordered something online and you had a problem with customer service, and, you can, if you're explaining the problem, a little bit of presence might help. Or maybe an upcoming paper for another class, try to name that paper, think about what's going on in your other classes. Or a routine document you might produce as a professional in your field. I try to get them thinking about that over time as well. Maybe sometimes marketing majors might think, oh, maybe I could use presence in a marketing report. The idea there is just to get them to think about, okay, where can I use this? So that's how it would look before adjusting for AI. And then after adjusting AI, everything would stay the same up until it comes to apply. And so once again, I would do the knowledge inventory, and then I would do the ladder of abstraction with them. And I would, do the little thing with amputation and surgery, just to help solidify it a little bit further. I would deliver the same material about presence from Richard Nordquist's entry on thoughtco.com. And then I would also still show them my description of my kitchen, my galley kitchen, and all of the details that I would have there. So I would do all of those things the same. And I would still pose the question about the blue convertible Volkswagen. But then when it comes to adapting for AI, when it comes to the apply section, if I've already done review, launch, deliver, when it comes to apply, I would change it up a little bit. And so this time in class participation, I would say list as many concrete details about this classroom as you can. And so what I've done here is I've broken up my kitchen details. And you can see I've got them just in a list format. And so I took all the details out of that passage, and I just said, okay, here are all the things I could describe. The galley kitchen between the family room and the living room, gray granite countertops, black and dark red spots of color, bullnose edges, rounded corners, original cabinetry painted with Valspar Ultra White, nickel brush cabinet handles, and so on. So now I'm just doing this in list fashion, because what we want to know is first what the concrete details are. And then I would have them do the same thing. I'd have them do it in list fashion first. What are all the different things you notice about this classroom that you could describe? And just have them brainstorm that big list, as big as they can get it to be, in 2 or 3 minutes or whatever it takes. And so what that will do is that will focus their cognition on using the concept of presence before they jump to AI. Because what happens is if they jump straight to AI and let AI do it, it's not going to give their brain the opportunity to focus on using that tool. And so, and as we've seen before, the AI writing won't turn out the same way that theirs would, because AI doesn't know what their classroom looks like. And so we still want them to use the tool, but we want them to use it if they're going to use AI, we want them to focus on the tool first so that their writing that they do with AI has a chance of turning out better. And so I'd give them that as an opportunity. And then after they've had a chance to take a look at the classroom and to anticipate what they might describe in lots of detail, I would change the actual writing activity a bit. So here are the instructions for that. Using your details, prompt your favorite chatbot to develop or write, looks like I have a typo there, a passage of description like mine, but make yours about our classroom. Make sure to make the classroom seem present to someone who has not seen it. Make the language as concrete as you can. Don't let the chatbot make up generalized details. And so there, they would have to, they could, prompt the chatbot using all of those details. And that would take some prompting and some reprompting and stuff like that. And so now that I'm thinking about this, it would be nice to have a little workshop just on, my end, maybe before this one, where, the way that you use AI is you prompt it, but then you reprompt and you keep working with it sometimes as you're trying to get it to do what you want. And so that's another lesson plan that I could include before this. But then the close would be the same way as well. The reflection at the end, the same as before. In your notes, name another specific circumstance in which you might use presence in writing. Because I've just introduced it to them, I want them to know, the importance of the tool and how the tool can be helpful. And we've got to start thinking about that. This is a way to do that, to help them solidify that knowledge about the tool first. I could have other reflective questions about artificial intelligence, which I would also want to sprinkle throughout my lesson plans. Sometimes my closure in a particular lesson might be about that instead, more about AI and what its affordances or what its limitations are. When I go back to presence with my students later in the semester after this, I could ask a question like that. How well does AI do presence? How well does your favorite chatbot do presence versus what we've done in class? Just to kind of keep them thinking and to keep assessing their own knowledge about it, how applicable it is, how AI might perform and how they might adjust, and so on and so forth. So lots of little things there that could be done. But that's basically what I have. And so, once again, learn the tools, use the tools, practice the tools, and reflect on the tools. Hopefully that's all going on in here as well. So a few different things happening at the same time. One thing that I've noticed about teaching, one thing that just comes to me right now is that, it's kind of like driving in a sense. I've got two things here that I'm working with. I've got review, launch, deliver, apply, close to add some structure to my lesson plan. And then I also have at the same time, I've got learn, use, practice, and reflect. Those are in there too. And there's a lot of overlap with those, but when I do a lesson plan, I want to make sure that students are learning the tools and using the tools. I think that's really important. And so those two things are going on at the same time. Just like if you're going to make a left turn at a traffic light, there are lots of things to focus on that are all kind of happening at the same time. And so that metaphor that analogy, I should say, just popped into my mind. But that's about all I have for now. I guess... where am I? I guess that's about it. I really appreciate it, and I thank you for listening or watching, and I will have a few more things to bring up this summer and add to this podcast, which I hope you're enjoying, and we'll continue soon. So thank you very much, and I hope you're having a great summer. I hope you're having a great start to your semester coming up here in the near future.